everyone. My guest today is going to be Joe Palermo, and we will be covering a variety of subjects. One in particular, Chupacabra, Bigfoot or Sasquatch, and generally ETs and UFOs. So there's a lot of information. I hope you get a chance to listen to all of it. Joe will be showing some very interesting footage he shot regarding the Sasquatch and Bigfoot phenomena, and I hope you get a chance to visit this website and see that as well. The links all will be posted in the description below, and yeah, let's get into it. Here's Joe. Hey, Joe, welcome to Webcast. Thanks for being on.
Hey, thank you very much for asking me, Adnan. It's a pleasure to see you again, and I know we're going to have a good one here because we always do.
Good to see you as well. Well, the format usually is I'll go through all the questions, and after we're done, I'm pretty sure I'll ask some questions of my own, and I figured we'll just get going.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. So the first question is from Hazel, Malaga, Spain. The question is, in your opinion, do you think there's a way to get an ET to hear what we are saying to them? Second question is, I always tell them that it is okay to visit. Do you think my message is getting through? And then the last one, what is the best way to communicate with them? Many thanks. So I figured I'll leave it up to you which order you want to take this.
Well, it sounds like a good order as it is, so that's fine. Hello, Hazel. Thank you for submitting a question. And you broach a very, very interesting subject. Many people on this planet have a very strong desire, why I'm not entirely sure, but very strong desire to communicate with other beings. And the trick to that question is that you need to be very specific about who or what it is that you want to communicate with and what your intentions actually are. Because if you leave it open, you leave yourself open to any intelligence coming through, whether it's alien, extraterrestrial, from the spirit realm, what level of consciousness that may be interested in communicating. So you really need to be specific in what you're asking for, and you always need to use protection. You always need to guard yourself against lower level entities that may very much want to break through and communicate. So that would be my first response to your questions. As far as are they around and do they hear your question, I would say yeah. Yeah. Now whether the consciousness that's there hearing you wants to communicate with you, that's on their end. It's like going into your favorite place, public place for coffee or whatever, and standing up in the middle of the place and going, "Hey, does anybody want to talk?" Maybe they do, maybe they don't. So, does that kind of cover the questions that were asked by Hazel?
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to see if I missed any of them.
Okay. Just be careful, Hazel. Don't just invite anybody to talk.
So the second question is from Anthony from Rayong, Thailand. He asks, what do you know of the other races of humans that seem to have coexisted with us before the last great cataclysm, affectionately known as the coneheads because of their elongated skulls? Are they of earthly or alien origin? Were they our rulers? Were they the giants of old?
Well, first, thank you, Anthony, for submitting your question. And what I will say is that I personally, because of the way the question is formatted, I personally can't say that I know for sure anything about these beings. It sounds like maybe you've watched a lot of Ancient Aliens on television, perhaps. And let me state this for the viewing audience and for Anthony. Nobody knows for certain. We're dealing with a ton of speculation on artifacts and inferred knowledge about these things. Whether they were the last cataclysm or 3 cataclysms ago, we don't know. I do know that from what I've heard from researchers like the late Colonel Wendell Stevens, the extraterrestrials that are out there, 90% of them look like us. Now, the question is referring specifically to artifacts or maybe remains or statues that are found of beings that have elongated heads. Whether they were gods or our rulers or what, nobody really knows. Did they rule over us? Apparently, there are humans that held these beings in high esteem because they made statues to them or whatever. So it's really difficult to answer your question with any certainty. So that's the best answer I can give you.
Okay. The next question is from Agnes, and she's from the Netherlands. Are Sasquatch evolved humans without alien manipulation? Do you know any sites in the Netherlands, Germany, Poland region where there is higher UFO ET activity?
Well, we're just going to cover the whole gamut here with this question, aren't we? Hello, Agnes from the Netherlands. I appreciate your question. And the first part of it regarding Bigfoot or the Sasquatch, only from a friend of mine who I consider my Sasquatch mentor, can I begin to broach your question? And that would be that Sasquatch, as addressed to this specific type of creature that my mentor deals with, we did pose that question. Are they, or do they originate from Earth? And the answer that came back was no, they are not originating from the planet Earth. Now, we didn't get any more information on that. In other words, we don't know where out there they come from, but they're not originally terrestrial. Now, again, that's from that particular clan of creature that my friend has dealt with. Could there be other creatures that resemble Sasquatch that maybe are originated from Earth? Possibly. We're still in that research and investigation of which creatures are similar or not. It's almost like we presume that all primates that are gorilla or orangutan or monkey, some subspecies, that they all come from the planet Earth because we can't really communicate with them. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. We don't know yet. We're still in that discovery process. As far as the other countries you mentioned and in UFO or alien activity, that's a tricky one too, only because we're only just now sharing research with other countries in the past 10, 15 years. It's a very slow process to know which seeming extraterrestrials are being seen more in specific countries. And there's beginning to be a breakdown, according to the reports that we're getting, of what eyewitness testimony are telling us. And it's not broken down enough for me to be able to actually answer your question with any precision. I apologize for that, but it is what it is with the communication that we have around the world. And there's even speculation through some intelligence that some UFOs are living beings, not just if you kick it, does it clunk? So it's very open yet. I would be very interested in knowing what your research and investigation may tell us So if you would, maybe you could communicate that with Adnan and UFO Hub and share some of your knowledge with us on that.
Okay. And the last question is from Jairo, North Hills, California. Why are some critics more prevalent than others? And there are so many here.
Okay. In trying to break down that question, well, I think probably there's critics, and in ufology there are debunkers. Critics we're open to. We need critical thinking in being able to understand what these things are that we're experiencing are, if we can even break it down that far, because we are dealing with seemingly advanced technology and certainly somewhat advanced beings in this. And some beings aren't even involved in any kind of aircraft at all. They're just consciousness that comes through. So it becomes very tricky for us humans to analyze and understand. And from a skeptical or critical standpoint, you're applying the logic that those of us who can do critical thinking we're trying to answer it from that aspect. Why are they allowed voice? Why are there more? Because I think these subjects in these areas of interest are gaining a wider audience. I think those people that may have just said, oh, that's a bunch of nonsense, 25, 30 years ago, it's still in our lives, and these things are even greater in our lives. They are penetrating into more and more people's lives. People who never gave a thought to UFOs or aliens. It's there. They can't ignore it anymore. So they're lending their voice to it and going, well, because I think it scares them personally. I think it scares the logical mind because it doesn't readily fit into people's lives, even though it is in people's lives, and even people who are open to the idea. It's disconcerting. They don't know where to put it. I have some very dear friends that I've met through this sort of thing, and they will often call me asking me questions very similar to what you're asking, because they haven't yet fit it into their lives. And it is disruptive to human lives. And that's why I'm into this whole thing, trying to understand what's going on so I can help my friends, even in my own. I'm good with things that I've experienced and what I've seen. I have no problem fitting them into my life because they're there. I cannot do to myself what some other people can do. I can't say, la, 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 that didn't really happen, that didn't exist, blah, blah, blah. I can't, because I know my mind well enough. It's like, and let me add this is, I think, important. When I experience something that seems out of the norm, whether it's a UFO or the aliens are pretty good at covering their tracks, and you don't really think a lot about that. When I have whatever kind of encounter it is, whether it's spirit, UFO sighting, Bigfoot, whatever, my mind is also still taking in everything else. And that has always been my checkpoint. It's like, okay, everything else outside of this one item that I'm seeing falls into the category of normal. Even if my bed were to start levitating, it's like, okay, my computer's still here, my table is still here, my shelf of everything else is normal. This is the only thing that is seemingly abnormal. So that allows me in my mind to say, okay, this is real because everything else around me is real. This is the only oddity. So let me take in as much of this oddity as I can with all of my senses, so that later I can take an objective. And I know people have an issue with this, where you experienced it, it's got to be subjective. I seemingly have a gift because I don't have an agenda with it. I want to look at it. If I can explain it, then I explain it. It's a done deal. If I can't explain it, then it's not a done deal, and I put that into a category. Psychology wants to say that you can't be objective if you're involved. I disagree with that. And while we're on that concept, let me say that I am in a position in my life, I've been doing this all my life, and I'm in a position of challenging current thought. I've had 10 years study of metaphysics and parapsychology, and I challenge a lot of what's considered guidelines in all of this stuff. I would if I don't care if it's a named person or somebody brand new on the scene, if I disagree with their concept, I'm going to challenge it, and I'm going to give an explanation as to why I'm challenging it. And that's what we all need to do. If it doesn't make sense to you, challenge it. But be prepared to back up why you're challenging it. Don't do it arbitrarily. Don't do it just to be, well, I'm going to take the opposite side of the table. You need to have a reason. And that's my challenge to all the, quote, debunkers out there. Okay, if you want to, just as a quick example of stupid debunking, I think it was in the early 80s, there was a Japanese airliner that flew across the continental U.S. at the border of Canada. On the plane itself, there was visual witness to this UFO outside the plane, following the plane. Onboard radar picked it up, and Royal Canadian Air Force radar picked it up. They picked up an object shaped like a walnut, and the size, get this, the size of 7 aircraft carriers. Now, most people who know anything about aircraft carriers say they are such a size they're a city in and of themselves. This thing was 7 times that. And the late Philip Klass, one of the main debunkers in ufology, went on, I think it was on 2020 television show, and said that, well, it's obvious that what they were seeing was the planet Jupiter. Now, I don't know about you guys, but really, we've got ground radar and airplane radar that picks up the planet Jupiter? Now, that's well worthy of a challenge. I challenge anybody out there to show me a radar system, ground radar system, designed and that will pick up any planet in the solar system. So, you got to be willing, you got to listen very carefully, and you've got to pick it apart, and you've got to be ready to challenge what's being said.
Okay, thanks for that, Joe. I wanted to ask what would be best to go into, because you cover a variety of different subjects. For example, Chupacabra, Bigfoot as well, and alien, as we've just heard. And so, do you mind if we go into a segment talking a little bit about Chupacabra? And because I know you were on a crew back in the 90s, going down to South America to do some filming, especially during that time when this was at its height, if I'm not mistaken. So I wanted to get a little bit into that, and maybe some of the other subjects. Does that sound okay with you?
That sounds terrific. That sounds terrific. And I'm glad that we're doing this about the Chupacabra, because there's so much misinformation out there. It was February 1996 when we went to Puerto Rico, not South America. So many people think that it was South America. No, it was Puerto Rico. That was the height of the Chupacabra activity. And actually, the Chupacabra activity had been going on in Puerto Rico for a year before we went. And this is partly how information came out. And we had, what really got me intrigued was the fact that TV show Inside Edition did a small piece on the Chupacabra. The Wall Street Journal, about a paragraph, in the Wall Street Journal was written up about the Chupacabra, primarily because the Chupacabra, and according to Dr. Carlos Soto, a veterinary who did necropsies on the animal victims of this creature, I think he called it perfectly. He said it's an unknown predatory creature. Sums it up. And, you know, in Puerto Rico, there's a lot of agriculture. There's a lot of, you know, agricultural animals and domestic animals both were being hit. And, you know, when you wake up and you got your prize $2,500 or $5,000 or whatever prize bull dead in the field, assuming that these puncture wounds that were on it did it, you just lost a big amount of money. And this is part of the reason that the government of Puerto Rico got involved, and the article in the New York Times was in there, Wall Street Journal, because it was becoming an economic hardship on the people. So this information came to me through a MUFON meeting. For those of you who are not familiar with MUFON, it stands for the Mutual UFO Network, the longest civilian effort to research and investigate from a scientific standpoint this UFO phenomena. And we were in Collinsville, Illinois, here in the United States, and a late friend of mine, Bob Buck, brought a faxed illustration of this creature. And as he passed it around, there was a lot of ooh and going on. And I got a hold of it. And to me, given that I have a movie making background, to me, I immediately thought, this looks like it's from a cheap, bad B movie. You know, it's like, this thing shouldn't exist. And eyewitness testimony says that it has scales, hair, and feathers. Biologically, that should not happen. You know, it's like this creature should not be able to exist. It also has some sort of quill-like appendages from the crown of its head all the way down its back. And these things are feather-like, and when the Chupacabra has been seen to seemingly get excited, they stand up off its back, stand up horizontally and flutter horizontally in a rainbow of colors. Has 3 fingers with claws, as Madeline Tolentino talks about, and 3 toes on each foot with claws. And I was asked to be the official videographer on this trip in February '96, and I went. We did a number of interviews with police officers, eyewitnesses. In fact, maybe at the bottom here somewhere where you guys are watching this, we can put a link to my webpage for viewing of the documentary that I did.
Sure. Yeah, we'll have that.
My documentary, pieces of my documentary, and I've been on camera for Monster Quest, something called Paranatural on the National Geographic Channel, and Monsters and Mysteries in America on Destination America Channel. And they all 3 got it wrong. I don't know how or why. But the crux of the matter is, it's not what television has led viewers to believe. It's not a canine-looking, dog-looking creature. That's not what this is. This is a very, very bizarre, strange, bipedal, dinosaurish creature that it doesn't eat the animals, it doesn't render the animals. I'll give you one item because I want you guys to watch the documentary to get all of it. When this creature, okay, one of the things that intrigued me with Dr. Soto's commentary was that in the puncture wounds, he found no sign of any saliva. And I'm because from the get-go, everybody was saying that this thing was like a vampire and it drained the blood and blah, blah, blah. It didn't drain the blood. He said that there was either the normal amount or a little bit less than the normal amount, but the animals were not drained of blood. So it's like, okay, what in the world? Why is there no saliva? And it finally occurred to me. Claws on fingers, claws. The thing was grabbing the animals and puncturing. That's where the puncture wounds came from, was from the claws. Now this being has some sort of very much like an anteater, a tongue that, comes out and elongates and all that. And speculation is that it would put its tongue into one of these puncture wounds, and then the tongue would be searching through the body. Now, this is a strange, how this thing knows the anatomy of all the animals that it deals with is questionable. I mean, how? That's like your dog knowing where your liver is and going after your liver. A dog doesn't have any idea of your anatomy. Now, one of your other interviews, Kat Hughes, might disagree with me on that part. Maybe she could talk to some animal and find out if they do know anything about anatomy. So y'all that are watching this, go check out Kat Hughes' interview too. The animal communicator. So yeah, the inner organs. There would, from one puncture wound, he would peel back epidermis layers, and he might find 4 other holes with no outer means of outer, trauma, and he'd follow that one hole and might lead down to the heart. And the heart would have 2 or 3 strips of tissue removed. Follow it maybe to a kidney, same thing. Maybe to a stomach, same thing. And it's like, how is this even possible? So no, this is a very, very strange creature. And in the last, I'll say 6 months, I've heard from a new friend in Puerto Rico who says the activity started up again. Now remember, when I was there, it was 1996. So we're talking, was it 6, 16, 18, 22 years ago? And now it seems to be starting up again. So I'm hoping to get a production company interested in going back down there and doing an update on the Chupacabra. That would be very interesting. And I would love for anybody watching this to submit questions about the Chupacabra. So do you have any more questions on this?
I do. Were there any speculations at that time, and maybe since then, or at least where this thing is from? Is it just another subspecies of some sort of animal, or something else?
You ask an ideal question, and it's the same question that's been asked about the Bigfoot creature. In fact, there's an interesting similarity with these two. In answer to your question, Adnan, no, we have no idea. It shows up, does its thing. Nobody, it's speculated there was a homicide detective on the last day that we were in Puerto Rico. We were in the Mayor Canovanas's office looking for this homicide detective. And right now his name escapes me. But this story that we heard was that this guy was getting ready to go to work in the morning. He had a pet Doberman Pinscher that was in the garage, and he heard it howling. He went out there, and there was this, quote, bat-like creature over it trying to grab it at the Doberman Pinscher. Detective Rivera, I think was his name. He goes back in the house, gets his service revolver, goes back out to the garage, and point blank shoots this thing several times. Blood splatters up on the wall of the garage. It rolls backwards, tumbles backwards, takes a bound, up over the fence onto I believe it was a palm tree, and then disappeared. This thing was shot point blank with a service revolver and kept going. This homicide detective that knows about crime scenes and the preservation of a crime scene was so unnerved, he got the hose, he washed all the blood off of the garage wall, then he got some primer paint out and painted over it. How are you a homicide detective knowing how to preserve a crime scene and you do that? It must have completely freaked him out. So,
well, I mean, based on the description, it didn't look human. So it's not like you could have mistaken it for, or maybe I just killed somebody, out of, as this reactionary act. So yeah, that's confusing.
Yeah. But that's, if we could talk to the late Bud Hopkins, who's considered a major pioneer in alien human abduction research, he would tell you that all of these things we're talking about, they have no prejudice. They're equal opportunity. Whether you're on unemployment or you are Bill Gates and make $1 bazillion a year, doesn't matter to it. If it's going to appear into your life, it's going to appear into your life. So, yeah, we don't know. Now, going back to the similarity, and I found this out from my Sasquatch mentor. Okay, one of the first things that I found out about the Chupacabra, it projects light from its eyes, like a flashlight. That was stunning. In the last, I'm going to say 5 years, and talking with my Bigfoot mentor, what? You have a question? You want to say something?
No, the question is about the eyes particularly. Is it more, so you said like a flashlight, or is there more strength to that beam towards more projecting more like, I wouldn't say laser-like, but more of a projected beam? Or are you saying they're just glowing red?
No, they're not glowing. Well, you can see the eyes themselves are red, but there's one witness described it like a flashlight of red, but in the center, like maybe where your pupil would be, a strong yellow light, like a laser. There's speculation that there's something about this light, something about the eyes that sort of hypnotizes the animal, because the animals just go neutral, and this creature does what it does. Now it has had to chase bulls. We know of at least one case in where a bull was chased in the corral it was in and chased down and killed by at least one chupacabra. And while I'm thinking of it, chupacabra, Spanish, translated means goat sucker, because goats were the first animals found that were victims of this thing. But it goes after anything. Now, I do not accept people that say, "Yeah, man, the chupacabra attacked me." I don't buy it. If you have the ability to chase down a 2,500-pound bull and kill it, a human being is not going to be a challenge to you. A human being is not going to escape you. And I haven't heard, with Madeline Tolentino, one of the people that we interviewed in my documentary, when she encountered the chupacabra face to face, sort of, it was like 4 feet from her. It made no move whatsoever towards her. Now, regarding the eyes again, during the day, the chupacabra's eyes are jet black. Only at night does it do this projecting of light. As will the Sasquatch creature. The Sasquatch creature can make its eyes different colors at the same time, or all the same color, like all blue or all green or all yellow. But it will also project light out of its eyes. I find that very interesting.
So
Another
before we go into Sasquatch, I just want to ask one more question and kind of
Sure.
to finish up with the Chupacabra segment. So,
Sure.
any particular? Forgive me if I've somehow totally missed this. Was there a description about its skin, and the way is it kind of adapted to the environment to where it's difficult to see, or does it stand out if you were to see it?
Well, that's hard to say because there's only been a few actual, quote, manhunts going after it. Seemingly the most prominent way to realize that you're in the presence of a chupacabra is the odor it puts off. These things has been compared to a pig farm, rotten eggs, a very strong stench. Which, interestingly enough, and this hits what I was about to say, anyway, Sasquatch is said to render the same kind of odor. Now, in any of the research I've ever done and any of the on-site investigation and actual encounters with these things, I've never experienced any odor. But that was simply my experience. I can't negate the experience that other people have reported. But I doubt seriously that the history of people that have reported Sasquatch encounters and the history of people that have reported Chupacabra encounters have any knowledge of each other. So it's not like, well, I heard the Bigfoot does smells bad, so I'm just going to say the Chupacabra smells bad. No, I don't see any way possible that that's going on. But the beams of light coming out of their eyes, that they both have a stench, they both, I would venture to speculate, have an interdimensional quality to them. We know that the Sasquatch can cloak and be interdimensional. We know that the Chupacabra, it's speculated, because no one can track this thing down, very much like the Sasquatch. It could have that quality. It could be standing right next to you and you not know it because it's cloaked or gone, to a different frequency, different vibration. So, next question, sir.
So I guess let's get into Sasquatch, or do you prefer Bigfoot? Is there a consensus there?
It depends on what language you're talking in. Sasquatch is actually from given Indian tribes. Bigfoot is what just general Americans call it. Over in the Himalayas, it's the Yeti. Down in Florida, it's the skunk ape.
So if I'm using those terms interchangeably, you're not going to mind?
No.
Okay. All right. How did you get into, I guess, studying Bigfoot? And based on all the research that you were able to find, because I don't know if you want to discuss some of the information and things that you've shown me in the past, which are pretty amazing. So I don't know if you've gone public with that yet. But can you just start out how you got into this? What brought you to start studying Bigfoot, and then generally what you found about that?
Okay. Well, essentially what got me into studying Bigfoot, given that my life had already been full of paranormal, when I started finding out about the concept of Bigfoot, it intrigued me. And there was a movie in the early 70s called Creature from Black Lake. And there was that one, and there was the Legend of Boggy Creek. Those are the two movies that really got me interested in Bigfoot. And then September 14th and 15th of 1976 in St. Louis County, Missouri, in Creve Coeur Park, I hesitate to call it an encounter, but I don't know what else to call it, with what was likely a Bigfoot. And given that the park was nearby, and given that I actually could say, hey, there's something there, that started me off on a 5-year venture of investigating the park, trying to find any signs of the Bigfoot creature. And that led into blood samples being found, being analyzed by a local vet. That actually the blood samples we found were a mixture of canine and an unknown. And when the vet discovered that this one was unknown, he essentially said, I don't want any more to do with this. And if you tell anybody that I looked at this or analyzed it, I will kill you with my own hands.
That's a threat.
That's, you know, and along the way, it's led to, I went to Lindenwood Colleges in the late 70s, and a female friend of mine, who I guess wanted to help me do my research, she indicated that in a law library at Washington University, she came across a book talking about an experiment that the government had done in trying to create super soldiers, essentially. And that the result of those experiments, which interestingly enough, I'm finding some support for what she told me back then, some of these beings escaped, and that these are alleged to be the Bigfoot. Now, that gets into what we were talking about earlier regarding Bigfoot. You may come across a creature that physically fits a given description. It might be a Sasquatch. It might not be a Sasquatch. Maybe it is an actual alien. We as human beings are quick to try to identify something. That's why it's so mind-boggling to us when we come across something that we've never been told about or encountered, and we're trying to figure out, how does this fit in my life? But within my 5 years of Bigfoot research for Creve Coeur Park, we wound up sending the remaining blood samples to a friend of a friend at an animal research center in Arizona, and he got all excited. They got all excited because they couldn't identify it. We were told that they were going to send the samples off, the rest of them off to Washington, D.C. for a worldwide examining of that worldwide database, I guess. In fact, at that time, we're talking about computers that ran on the old cards. The program was done by punctures in the cards that ran through. So it was still slow. But last we knew was this guy was fired from the institution he worked for using the equipment without proper authorization. And initially, the people here were all excited and wanted to arrange funding for them to come and do field research. And then about 2 weeks later, we were told he was fired, no reason, given, the use of using the equipment. So this guy made copies of all the paperwork that had been done so far and was on his way up here to St. Louis, stopped by his mom's house in Texas, never arrived. And this was my first lesson in media and paranormal, if you will. I told interestingly enough, my car insurance guy about what happened, and he knew a reporter at Channel 4. So he contacted them, arranged a meeting. I went and talked with past news reporter Steve Schiff and
this
Channel
is
4.
local St. Louis?
Local St. Louis, CBS affiliate, yes. And they were very fascinated by the story, but I didn't have any visual evidence to support what I'd been through. So they couldn't do a story on it. The guy at that time I was working with had a contact at Channel 2, KTVI here in St. Louis, local ABC affiliate at that point, and got a special assignment reporter, Molly McKitterick, to come out and try to do a story. The story never aired, although she did come out to Creve Coeur Park and do some recording with me. And
so, why is such I guess all these people losing their jobs and told not to talk about it. What was the potential threat here? I mean, I'm pretty sure there's still some things on the planet that we just haven't really, again, I don't know about discovered, but haven't really identified fully. So other than just having an extensive library of unidentified things, why such a brouhaha over this?
Well, I think your concept of things we haven't discovered is very true. We're discovering all kinds of new life in the oceans every day, and we haven't come near to exploring all of the land mass on this planet or the caves that we have, cave systems. That's a whole other story. But to answer your question, I think what we need to consider is things that involve the paranormal, whether it's Bigfoot, Chupacabra, whatever. There are certain segments of world governments that have been investigating this stuff as well. And I think if we get too close to getting X amount of information, then we're also on the precipice of getting involved in other national security information that they absolutely do not want out.
Okay.
Stanton Friedman, nuclear physicist Stanton Friedman, who's been a, quote, professional ufologist for as long as I've been born. He started in 1958. That was the year I was born. In 1985, at the MUFON Symposium held here in St. Louis, he said that one of the reasons, because people ask this all the time, why doesn't the government want us to know about this? He speculated that after the discovery of the Foo Fighters, I think that was World War II, that the varying countries came together and, America asked the Soviets, what in the world was that you had up there in the air? And they're asking us what it was we had up in the air. So all the countries are going, we don't know what those were. They were buzzing all of our planes. They were outflying us, doing 10,000 miles an hour and making a right angle turn and blah, 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 blah. So everybody thought everybody else had this secret weapon. And allegedly, there was a deal struck saying that, okay, this is bigger than all of us. We need to support ourselves. If any of us come across downcraft, information, technology, whatever, that we need to share it.
You mean including potentially dead DNA samples you guys had?
Well, maybe. Maybe. Let me finish this thought, and then I'll go to DNA samples like you're talking about. So while the varying countries' governments agreed to it on top of the table, we have to remember that here on Earth, until we come up with a different system, we live in a capitalistic society, and everybody is, defense-minded. You and I both being martial arts, we understand self-defense. But we're talking about grand-scale defense, the military. And if any country comes across the alien technology that could make them dominant militaristically, they're not going to share it with anybody. Otherwise, they're giving away their power. It's like, you're packing a gun and you come across some thug with a stick, a club that wants to rob you. That's like you saying, well, I've got this 357, but I'm going to share this with you. Here, you want to rob me, so I'm going to give you my gun. Ain't going to happen. Not if you're smart. So that's the speculation in the varying reports regarding alien technology. They don't want the other guy to get it. So as long as they're in public denial,
Right. Well, so that's why I'm trying to, because my question was about why such a brouhaha over, let's just say, this DNA. And I guess, by listening to your story, are you then trying to say that because of these pacts and agreements that maybe this sample that was submitted would fall under that something unknown has come up? is important enough to squelch it and keep it on the down low.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. Because you have to be forward thinking. Okay. And I know you are. Weird DNA sample that doesn't match anything gets sent to Washington. They analyze it and go, this is of a creature that we are trying to keep under wraps from the public. Whether it was Sasquatch, whether it was a wolf creature, a dog man, or other types of aliens that might be out there in the woods that we don't know about, they can't have transparency. Because if it says, okay, let's say that the blood sample wasn't Bigfoot, let's say that it was of some alien, then if we go forward with this, then we are having to admit that we have information on aliens, and all of our fellow countries are going to be either clamoring at us or spying on us or infiltrating to try to find out what we know. We have to remember that Area 51 was not publicly known until Soviet reconnaissance satellites went over and caught, from space, got satellite pictures of it. And that made the news. And then our government finally had to admit, oh yeah, there is Area 51. It's like, how do we cover this up? They've got satellite pictures of the place. The SR-71 was not admitted to being real until one crashed, and they couldn't deny it.
Okay. Well, we'll get into the alien craft and alien in the third segment. So I just would like to, if you could please continue, then after that experience, then what else, I guess, how your research into Bigfoot continued to develop.
Sure. So, again, while I was at Lindenwood, it was very much on my mind. And I would tell people my story, and it spread. I was also the guy on campus that got kept from falling down the steps at Sibley Hall by Mrs. Sibley, the ghost of Mrs. Sibley. So I had already developed a paranormal reputation at college. So a couple of friends of mine, one of them being a gal I was dating, another gal that was a continuing United student, and the guy I was working with at the time, Rick McCann, all decided to go out, and this is the forerunner to the Molly McKitterick coming out and trying to do a story. We went out to Creve Coeur Park to try to find any kind of cave, any area that Bigfoot might be able to be in. And while we were doing that, one came up on us. I was the only one of us four that didn't get to see it, because we found a place at the bluffs, an opening, not big enough to crawl in, but definitely an opening into the bluffs. And Rick had sent me up top to see if there was an opening up top of the formation. So I went up there, and I always brought walkie-talkies with me. This was before there were cell phones, of course. I'm old. So there was no opening that I could see. I radioed back down to Rick and said, hey, there's no openings. What's going on down there? Over. I got no response. I radioed it again, the same message. I got no response. And then I noticed around me, the air was really still. There was no wind. There was no rustling in the trees. I couldn't hear anything. It was like being in a vacuum. It's like, there's something wrong. I need to go back down. So I'm heading back down, and I get halfway down, and I hear something running in the woods. And I look up, and there's Rick, all 6'4", 275 pounds of him, hauling ass out into the woods. I'm like, what is going on? And I get on down to the bottom, and there's Burma and Beth being the gal I was dating at the time. Burma, full-blooded Indian, looking as pale as you. It's like, what happened? She said she saw it. Saw what? And I get this look from both of them, like, what do you think we're out here looking for? You saw it? Yeah, and Rick ran after it. And probably 5 minutes later, Rick came back, out of breath, and said, "Man, that thing can move fast." And I asked him what happened. He said, "Burma, Beth and Rick were trying to look in this hole at the bottom of the bluff. I'm up top. Burma's bored, so she takes her field glasses out, her binoculars, and she's doing one of these things, kind of scanning the area. And at one point, all of her vision goes black. And she said, "What was that?" She comes back and she brings the glasses down, and it's a Sasquatch that had come like within 50 feet. And it turned and bolted. She said, "That's actually seeing the creature wasn't what scared her. It's that something that big could move that fast." And Rick said he chased after it as long as he could, and he said, "I don't know what happened to it. It was just gone. Just gone." That's a very important point, especially, and your listeners are going to pick up from what I said earlier, I think. So it was quiet for a while. I would periodically go out there only during the day. You would never catch me in Creve Park at night. And I went years and years and years and years and years, not finding anything else, not getting any other information. And then I met online on Facebook, through Facebook, my Sasquatch mentor, who answered so many questions. When she told me, I don't want to say her name because she's retired recently. She said, "Take the information I've given you and use it. Just do it anonymously. I don't want," because apparently in the Bigfoot world, it is so competitive. Everybody wants to be number one. Everybody wants to say, "My information is right. Your information is wrong." Blah, 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 blah. And folks, I can tell you, I've spent time with this person. I've gotten on video. I actually got one of these creatures on camera. And I'll get Adnan the link to it so UFO Hub can share it with you guys. And Adnan, you saw it.
Yeah.
What do you give us your thoughts on that footage?
When you first showed it to me, we were just sitting there. We're about to start. We were at the Steak and Shake, right? If I'm not mistaken. And you just turned the laptop around and were showing me the footage. And so I'm watching, and you haven't told me much, so I figured, okay, you guys are out recording things, and the way the trees were broken off and I guess formed in a certain way that just didn't look natural. And that's when I guess the shot or the frame that I remember kind of panned back and forth. And I looked at you, I looked down, I said, how many were there? And you said 3 of you, 1 in the car, and 2, I guess you guys were talking. So
well, you're talking about a story I told you. That's not the video. The video, I'm out in the woods.
Right. Well, you panned the camera, right?
I did. I had the camera running, and I'm talking, and I thought, why?
That's what I'm referring to.
Well, there weren't 2 or 3 or 4, unless you saw something that I don't know.
No. I'm talking about you, a friend of yours, and the gal in the car. That's what I was asking. How many were there?
I'm sorry.
Right. That's what I meant. How many people were there? Because I was trying to see, okay, could this be someone else? I said, well, if you're talking to the guy and the gal is in the car, who's this? And then you just kind of smiled and nodded your head. Because it was that brown figure, correct? Right.
Dark brown figure.
Right. It's been a while since I've seen it, but yeah, that was pretty amazing. And then I asked you, so why didn't you continue filming? And then you said,
I didn't know it was there. It was purely by happenstance. My camera's all the way over there. Anyway, I've learned that when we're talking something paranormal, whether we're talking Bigfoot, spirit, UFO, whatever, it happens in its own time. And here I am, and then gone. So if you don't have something running, you're going to miss it. So I make a habit of I've always got that camera running. And that's what I was doing. I just recorded a twisted tree limb. That is a sign of Sasquatch. It's about 10 foot in the air, and they'll do that. They've got structures. They've got almost a sign language thing that they use between them to send messages to each other and to their young. But I just gotten through recording that. I kept the camera running. I bring it down, and I'm not even paying attention to where it's aiming. And I'm walking through brush, walking through some. I don't think I ran across stickers, but you hear me on camera say, "I need to start heading that direction where David is, over by the teepee structure, like a wooden teepee structure." And as I start to go that way, I bring my arm up to go over some brush, and in that moment I stop, and then I start to swing the camera over. In that one moment, I got, maybe 2 seconds, maybe, of the distance. And in that 2 seconds, there's that brown figure, probably 50, 60, 70 feet away. Completely still. Now, I did not know this until we finished doing what we were doing, and we went back to the house. And
yeah, I'm really interested to see what, if a chance, if the people get a chance to see that, because we'll have the link hopefully in the description,
yes.
so they can see this for themselves. Because especially what I like about you, even if in your heart you feel like, I'm pretty sure I know what I got, you still keep that skeptical mind going, and this is, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that this still would require some analysis and other, I guess, looking into of, okay, is what this was, what was captured.
For anybody else, yeah. Can I say definitively that it was Bigfoot? How in any of this do we say anything definitively? Which is what I think we led off with this interview, with the one question. There are no experts. If you understand the term expert, that means that you have knowledge of all that is in that. We're still investigating. We're still researching. There is no absolute knowledge that we can refer to. We can go back to anecdotal, and we can see a picture forming of information and data, but we can't say for sure. And Dave, the guy I was out shooting with, he's the one that actually discovered this. Dave has a hearing issue. He's partially deaf or mostly deaf, so his eyes have compensated for his deafness. And when we got back to the house, I promised these guys anything I shot, they would get a copy of. So we're transferring to their computer system, and his computer monitor was huge. It's like even a third larger than mine is right now. And we're running it, and he's looking, and he says, wait a minute, back it up. And I backed it up, and he points to the screen. What's that? And I'm looking, it's like, holy crap. Oh my God. This has got to be, it's humanoid, it's bipedal, dark brown, bulky, like hair, and big. There was nobody else out there with us.
Because to me at that time it appeared female, because it felt like, or based on the image, as if I guess the fur was covering up, I guess, the bumps where breasts would go.
And you know what? My Bigfoot mentor said the same thing. That's what she saw. You got to have super peepers to see this stuff. And I guess you got those super peepers, because I don't necessarily see that, but she said not only was it female, but it was carrying at least one baby Bigfoot with it.
Mm. Well, Joe, I'm sure everyone will, they'll have a chance to see it. I actually would like to get through a few more subjects with you, if you
Sure.
don't mind. I'm wanting to kind of, I think we've got a pretty good story how you started out and things you've done. So based on between now and maybe I guess from that moment until now, what other things, I guess, did you guys discover? I especially like the story when you keep talking about, was it, what is it called? There was a certain term you used.
They have the capacity to change the overall color of their eyes. Okay, and they glow. They call it. Some people call it eye shine, and that bothers
Shine. Okay, I'm sorry. I shine.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna sign.
Because when you say eye shine, people immediately think of animals reflecting light, and this is not what this is. This is their eyes are self-illuminating, and they will. I don't want to say Morse code because I'm sure it's not Morse code. It's their own language. They will blink. Independent eyes are together, whatever, and they can also say, for example, make this eye yellow and this eye green, and that's a language. So they communicate a lot between each other with their eyes.
And how, I mean, is this based on the information your mentor gave you or something else you guys discovered?
Based on information my mentor gave me. They are also telepathic. If you had that capacity. Now, in the psychic world, it's been said forever and a day, everybody is psychic. You just have to exercise that muscle, that psychic muscle. So everybody is psychic to varying degrees. Okay. When my mentor started dealing with these beings, when she and her brother were 14 and 15, and as she says, both accomplished martial artists in their own right, and there was stuff going on in their mom's yard, they would dress themselves up in ninja. They would be all in black and go out there to, fight the good ninja fight and be tossed around like nobody's business. It's like, what is doing this to us? And it wasn't until she was 35 that she got communication. That's when she discovered the Sasquatch, and that there are clans. They have a family structure and I don't want to say civilization like ours, but they marry, they have children, they educate. I guess almost what you could say is all of the good traits that you would find in humans, they do. Okay. What else?
Is the, I guess, just a large body structure and fur a commonality in Sasquatch, Bigfoot, or is that just a particular offshoot?
I would say a commonality. And the one that I saw in Creve Park, it moved between two trees, and there was a knot on one of the trees, and its head topped off at that knot. So I was able to go back and measure. It was 10 feet tall. My Sasquatch mentor has seen Sasquatch that are 20 feet tall, 30 feet tall. They are big. There's no indication that they are what's referred to as Nephilim. Okay, and a lot of people out there are trying to say they are the Nephilim. There's no indication that they are. Okay, now at the same time, there's not necessarily an indication that they're not. This is where we run into a huge issue in these realms that we're trying to get to know about. Because, for example, in ufology, with the Greys, the one consistent thing seems to be that they are deceitful. And I think this is part of the reason that some people want to say, well, they're really demons. I hold demons in this category and Greys in a whole other category. But people want a quick fix. So I was like, well, how do we evidence anything?
So did
So
you guys find, or was there something that gave you an indication that there might be a ET Sasquatch link, as some people have, I guess, kind of suspected in the past? Or what are your thoughts on that?
my thoughts on that are this. I think the people that have claimed to have seen Bigfoot come off of a alien craft saw some creature that looks a lot like Sasquatch, but I don't think it is a Sasquatch. I think it's some other alien type. Um, my Sasquatch mentor has told me, based on her communications with the one she calls grandfather, that, and this may be hard for those of you out there that have a hard time accepting the idea of humans being abducted by aliens, your head's going to spin when I tell you that there are Sasquatch that get abducted by aliens. That my mentor has witnessed Sasquatch near her home running for cover when a UFO comes overhead. They're not happy with that situation. On the property that they've had, there has been reptilians. In fact, this is a fun one. When I was up there and going down a highway with them during the day, she got an urge to take pictures out the side, and she took some pictures. And she knows, and this is something important for everybody to know. If you're going to document something you're seeing, please use video on your phone, and please get comparison footage. That helps a great deal. If you see something in the video, let's say that you're taking your kid to school at 8 o'clock in the morning, wherever you're at, and on the way back you think you see something, you whip your camera out and you get it on camera. The next day you take your kid to school at the same time in that same place, take another picture, take more video, and compare the two. If you don't see the same thing you got in the first video in the second video, chances are you got something. If you see the same thing, chances are it's natural to the environment. A pole, electric pole you didn't know was there, or a light pole you didn't know was there, you never paid attention to. But in this picture, and it's clear, and I was like, oh my God, look what you got. A reptilian, a Sasquatch, and a gray, all kind of near each other, near this sign that said something about, electrical cable down or something like that.
She wouldn't want to share that picture, would she?
I'll ask her. I don't know. But yeah, I saw it and I was like, do you realize what you got here? Only because it stood out enough from the environment that I was able to see it. Like I said, without David, I probably would never have seen the one off in the distance.
So just to, I guess, wrap up the Bigfoot segment, what would you recommend for people that are either, I guess, wanting to either go out and film or trying to communicate, whether it be telepathically or any otherwise? What would you recommend someone who I guess either has been in the field for a long time and maybe didn't think of this process, or someone who is brand new, and to give them something to start out with?
You must approach with a pure heart, with no ill intent whatsoever towards them. Okay, that's number one. Number two, you must show respect. And part of showing respect is not fearing. You have to lose the fear. When I was trying to prepare my friends to go out to Creve Park, in case we would come across the creature, I used to tell them, you need to take time, go to the zoo, and observe the gorillas and observe the bears, because it's kind of a cross between them. So you're ready visually if you were to come across a Sasquatch. Be aware of how you're feeling, Because if they can sense you, they can sense you a mile away. Okay, they're very psychic, and there's this. It's speculated, and there's been a number of people that have talked about feeling this. My mentor as well. If they like you, don't mind you being in the area, they're very territorial. So if they don't mind you being there, they may even project to you a ultrasound, which will make you feel comfortable and good. If they don't like you, they'll get, by projecting what they think is infrasound, then they can start giving you a headache, making you feel nauseous, making you feel like you want to pass out. Leave the area. That's being respectful. That's like saying, okay, you don't want me here. Okay, I get it. I'm leaving. I'm sorry. I did not mean to intrude. Ultimate respect is required. And what's really important is to recognize the structures that they've put in. And this is the best way to know if you're in Bigfoot territory. The trees. Watch the trees. Especially for branches that from a height of 8 or 10 feet, limbs that seem to be not just broken, but twisted and broken. That's a sign that something's grabbed it and twisted it. A bear's not going to do that. There isn't anything we have in the woods that's going to do that, except the Sasquatch. Watch for tree limbs that are hanging in trees. Watch for teepees made of wooden branches. And the way that you distinguish these branches and trees and the teepees are that they are typically made up of limbs from trees that are not found in the immediate area. You know, most of us, if we go out to the woods in a park or whatever, and we're kind of traipsing through, we've seen, branches that may have broken up off the tree from up and then fallen and gotten caught in the tree. And that's what we assume all of this is. But if you are observant and if you do a study of trees, botany, and you see a tree that has a different barking covering to it than the tree it's in, ask you, that doesn't look like a piece of that tree. And maybe you'll find 2 or 3 or 4 different kinds of tree limbs in that same tree. Chances are you've got Sasquatch doing something. Okay? So first you need to be aware of your surroundings, be aware of how you feel, and be respectful and pure of heart. Now, here's the trick. And this is part of the reason that I have not finished the seminars that she used to do online. Because her whole purpose for a while was to make you able to connect with the Sasquatch people. The problem that you have, if they accept you as family, mi casa su casa, they're fine with you being in their territory, in their home. You have to be fine with sharing your home with them. They are capable, they'll come onto your property, they will come into your house and play around, mess around. If you have food that they like, they'll take your food and eat it. This happened with David one time. He had gotten a whole case of cream soda. He got up one morning and decided he was going to go get himself a cream soda. He had a case of it in the refrigerator. He went in to get it, and it was all gone. And he accused the child in the house, his girlfriend, what the hell happened to my cream soda? And she said, look, please bring his soda back. And half of it came back. Half of it had not been drank. Do not try to leave gifts for the Bigfoot. If they have not accepted you, they look at that as a bribe. That's not pure of heart. You're trying to bribe them. They don't like that. So, I mean, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it. But the advice is do not do it. If you ever want to get a true, real, good relationship with the clan that is around you. And there are also renegades. There are also Sasquatch that have violated the rules of that particular clan or that society and have been kicked out. It's like getting the scarlet letter on.
I see.
Nope. You want to break the rules? You go live on your own.
Yeah, I think that's something that most people don't consider, because we always think they're all live only in one particular way, but then when you look at humans, you don't know who you're talking to.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And they have observed humans.
Right.
And when my mentor and I were first talking, she got thrilled with the idea that I do video because she had been communicated to in that there's a split right now. Now this is, God, when was that? That was back in 14. That was 4 years ago. That half of the Sasquatch population wanted to reveal themselves to humans, half did not. Because they're aware of something coming and they want to help humans. Some of them do. Some of them are like, keep those MFs away from me. So, and the last that I heard was that there's still a split. There is this, they feel a need to slowly reveal themselves. So I think very much like aliens and UFOs, I think it's going to be on a very much an individual basis. And they'll sense you first before they reveal themselves to you. Do not make the mistake of taking a gun with you. I even used to speculate when I would go into Creve Coeur Park about, well, I wonder if a tranquilizer gun would be an option. The only problem with that is you don't know what animal you're dealing. You don't know where Sasquatch is. You don't know the weight. You don't know the effect of the whatever chemical the tranquilizer is built up of. So that wouldn't work. I eventually got to the point, because this is back when I knew nothing, Adnan. I had sewn into my field jacket pockets for the old road flares, the kind that you would take the plastic cap off of, ignite at the tip, and fire. Because I asked my biology teacher at Lindenwood, I said, if you had to go into the woods and you couldn't take any firearms, you couldn't take a bow and arrow, you couldn't take anything like that, what would you take to protect yourself? And she thought for a moment and she said, fire. I said, fire? She goes, yeah. Anything living is made of protoplasm, and protoplasm burns. So road flares are not considered weapons. Except, of course, to the Bigfoot. That they can read your mind and they have this image of you doing that. And this is where the trust and the pure of heart comes in. And they'll test you. The young ones especially will test you. The young ones are very curious. I got to see a young one in Quiver River State Park here in Missouri. And was I ever able to talk to you about that, Adnan, or no? I don't remember if I did or not.
I don't think so. I don't remember that conversation.
I was up there with my mentor. She was preparing to introduce her cousin to the clan that was in Quiver River. And I was there first time at night in a park since Creve Coeur Park. But I had, David was there, and a friend of theirs named Rick was there. And Shell and her cousin disappeared down into the woods. That was when Shell saw the 30-foot Sasquatch, the one that spoke for the leader. And we're back up by the car and just chit-chatting, and I see movement peripherally. I train my eyes, and I see something bipedal, kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Move real quick and then stop. And then move real quick and then stop. And I'm like, guys, I'm seeing something right down here, and I describe what it's doing, and Rick says, oh yeah, that's a juvenile. They're very curious, and that's how they move. And it might have been 5 or 6 foot tall. And just like I'm on your eyes right now, I'm looking at this thing, and all of a sudden, it's gone. It didn't lay down, it didn't back up, didn't go to left or right, just gone. And it either cloaked or went dimensional. So I'm here to tell you, I witnessed this. This isn't anecdotal. I freaking seen this. And that's what they'll do. They'll cloak themselves and they will toy with you. They'll get up in the dark, of course, where you can't see anything. They'll get up right next to your ear and just to keep you scared.
Could this then, is that suggesting that I guess they can pop in and out no matter where they're at? It doesn't necessarily always just have to be the woods, but I'm sure they would feel more confident not being seen.
Oh yeah, they've been all through Chicago, city of Chicago, and they'll travel at night when they're less likely to be seen, but they'll the big trash dumps that the restaurants have, they'll trash dump dive. They'll find food in those. Anywhere they can find food, they'll forage. So yeah, they're very human-like.
Mm.
But you don't want to cross them.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, so to I guess tie in the third and last segment here regarding ETs, UFOs, and whatever other aspects of that phenomena you want to cover. What do you think they might have meant with, with the something coming? Are they more referring to something ET related or just something different? I guess they'll affect the planet.
I would probably say all of it, because my working theory, I've been studying this stuff a long time. And years ago, I came across a magazine. I don't remember the name of it, but it talked about Earth and its travel through space and our sun. I didn't know through most of my life that our sun was moving through space. So in effect, we are never in the same place in space at any one time. We've got that, 250,000 year run that we're doing around our central sun. And we are approaching, or we may even be in now, I don't know, what's called the Null Zone. Okay? I wish I could do a visual on this. Well, I kind of sort of am. If you look at my head and say that my head represents the majority of the travel of space, of the going around, okay? When we reach a point where we've got this place in space where the dark area on the wall back there is, that's what's called a null zone, or a zone of light. When we enter that, the entire planet and the entire solar system, for that lack of that, is bathed in a different energy. That, I think, is where, depending on where your consciousness is where you're going to move into, instead of elevate necessarily, but move into fourth and fifth dimensional thinking processes, which some people claim that we're already there. Okay, whether we are, or, maybe we've entered enough of the null zone for some of us to already be there. And it's logical sense that the beings and consciousnesses out there that I refer to as dark, who do not want to see us evolve because they feed on our energy as we are third dimensional beings, will do everything in their power to keep us from achieving that. And I think the Sasquatch know about this, so in an effort to help those of us who are ready to make that move in consciousness, that when the time is right, they will be there to help us do that. Maybe help ward off the dark consciousness, whether it be alien or lower energy beings or whatever it is. I do believe that they have for those who care, have our best intention at heart. And that's why we want to pay respect. And they're not the only beings out there. We're going to be seeing and witnessing more and more what we call paranormal beings happening. We're going to see more and more communication with the spirit realm, with all of it.
From your perspective, then, is all these supernatural things, I mean, everything included, basically here for, as you, I guess, described, for our shift then, for our consciousness shift?
A lot of it, yes.
So in other words, it's kind of like a prequel in a melding of these different dimensions, and we're starting to getting glimpses of different things that are, I guess, in some sense, have always been here, but with us changing our perception and perspective, I guess we would be becoming more aware of that. Would you say that?
I would say that, yes. I would say that. I would say that if it's unfortunate that it's taken this long for us to get here, because there could have been a lot of death prevented in the Salem witch trials.
Mm.
You know, when we were in the Dark Ages and we believed that anything out of our norm, or what the church called norm, was witchcraft, was dark, was the devil. Well, you got to kill the devil. From a metaphysical standpoint, and I think even from a scientific standpoint, we can all agree that if it exists, it's here for a reason. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to participate in it, you know, and that's a debate that I have with some friends of mine about light and dark. Well, but you have to embrace the dark side of you. It's like, you have to acknowledge the dark side of you, and in my opinion, work to overcome the dark side of you. But the term embrace, to me, means, I'm going to embrace it and love it. I can't.
Don't go dark,
love
Joe.
something
Don't go dark.
I'm not. You know, and I've been very fortunate in my life. At a time, I grew up late 60s, early 70s. And that was a time of a lot of experimentation, a lot of drugs, a lot of cult activity, a lot of bad juju. And I was very lucky with all the people that I have met in my life. It's almost like I had some guiding force making sure that I got involved in like-minded people. I think this is a kind of a fun side story. I think my dad was taken out by whatever forces that knew that I had a greater purpose in life. I don't want to say that he was necessarily the dark, but he was probably a narcissist before anybody really knew what narcissism was. And it wasn't until he died that my mother told me of the countless times that he beat her. And I know in my heart of hearts that had he lived, I was 12 when he died. Had he gone on and lived, and I had gone on and grown up, and I witnessed him trying to hurt my mother, it would have been bad news. Because I'd have stepped between them and I'd have said, And if he wanted to fight, okay, Katie barred the door. So that could have been, so something opted to take him out, in my opinion.
Right. So, Joe, I'm sorry, I don't mean to change the subject. So could you then, I guess, cover some of the examples and experiences, actually more so of what you found? If you can go a little bit into the experiences themselves, but mainly what you found, kind of like a list that you gave me with Bigfoot regarding UFOs, aliens, and all that in general. Like, what is your take on all this? Because obviously we're talking about this because we're all assuming here, and those interested that we are being visited, they play some kind of role. But what is it that you found?
What I have found, and what I form my opinions on right now, and it's all opinion, Like I said in the early part, nobody knows everything. And we hardly know anything, honestly. We have gone from a couple of civilian groups in the late 50s and 60s. And the timeline that we've got with ufology, lights, craft, some beings. Okay, now it takes us like 10 years to absorb that. And starting with my first sighting when I was 3 years old of a craft that was landed just down to the side of the building that we lived in, that silently rose up and then took off in the air, to all of the encounters that I've had. We're 15, 20 years behind the times, okay? It's more than extraterrestrial or alien craft. There was probably a time back in the 1800s when that was all it was. But as we as a population begin to absorb more revealed, detailed information, we discovered that besides only being alien or extraterrestrial, that some of them are from back-engineered alien craft, and they're our craft. That's what the speculation is with the triangular craft. If you have kept up with the concept that the reptilians got involved with Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, and they actually had, quote, alien craft, flying saucers of sort, even before the World War they got involved with, and that they took everything and started building under Antarctica, and that they have some sort of allegiance with the reptilian creatures. We're in a very expansive time with what we're discovering in ufology. We have aliens that are reported all over the planet. But the most important thing I can say about this is you can't just say, what do the aliens want, or where are the aliens from? You have to remember there's an S at the end of that word. When you say, what do they want? Well, which one? Are you talking about the Greys? Are you talking about the Zeta Reticulans? Are you talking about the reptilians? Are you talking about the Draco? Are you talking about the Mantis or the Nordics? Pick your alien. And then even that, you know, it's going to be a huge challenge for us who only think locally. I can't tell you much about, for example, the state of Montana or the state of Florida or any other state in this country that I'm in, because my experience is here in Missouri and some in Illinois, but that's my experience and knowledge base. So we're being positioned because of ufology. This is what I love about ufology. If you're going to get into ufology, if you're going to talk about aliens, we're talking their psychology, their sociology, what makes them tick, what is their government structure, so you bring the governmental concepts in. Do they have any medical? What do we do with the abductees that have implants? And okay, we got to know about human anatomy, which in fact the implants, the research on implants are helping us understand more and more about the human anatomy. It will take you into knowledge of your life and world that you had when you were in high school you didn't think about. When you were in high school, you just party and have a good time. Unless you wanted to go to college, and then you did all your study to get the good grades and blah, blah. This blows college out of the freaking water. Okay? You have to be open-minded and ready to absorb knowledge. Seriously, deep knowledge. Researcher Grant Cameron, who first came to light as being a researcher of what all the U.S. presidents knew or know about UFOs and aliens. the last time I heard him talk, we had him on Skype at one of our MUFON meetings under Debbie Ziegelmeyer, our Missouri State Director for MUFON. And where he left off his talk to us was that if you truly want to understand about UFOs and about aliens, you must learn about consciousness. Talk to your abductees. And that's where it all leads. That's what it's all about. As you and I have had many discussions about. So, yeah, all my experiences and all my interviews and all my research, that's where it's taken. And there's so much of the population that doesn't even know what a UFO is. We got a long way to go. And this is why I'm very thankful, Adnan, for the work that you're doing. Because without programs like yours, hopefully the programs I get to produce as well, the more people that see your programs, my programs, there's got to be an overall human consciousness growth.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. I mean, it all almost seems like it's without all of us understanding what exactly we're doing this for. One thing is for certain, those that are the most interested, the most, I guess, driven to understand the subject, always end up doing something related to what you do, what I do, and others, or they write a book about it or something that takes that information and makes it public. It's almost as if to, I guess, create some kind of base library of what's going on so that there's information available if and when something happens, they can revert to that information so that they're not as confused or, to say, because sometimes it's so weird, even if, let's say, I don't know, even if you're going through the most difficult thing, just knowing that there's some information that somebody could just relay their story to you almost alleviates the fear, and just so that you can say, there's someone out there that can relate to me or they understand. And it's not a, thing that only they are going through, which kind of sucks for the rest of us because we all have been going through this before anyone else understood what's going on, and only in the last 50 years or so, enough information has been coming out and evolving because it doesn't just stop at lights in the sky flying real fast. It went,
right.
It evolved not because of, we're bored, so let's just make up some kind of story. No, because information and witness stories and experiences have happened to where now it elaborates on those fast flying lights in the sky, and and to us, it's. I mean, sometimes I like to just kind of sit back and observe my quote unquote normal friends as when we have a conversation, and there's no judgment there. I just like to see when I talk about things matter of factually and start to talk about, to people that they're just, all they know is just the day-to-day normal things. And so to go into in-depth stories of, well, I was conveyed this and I was told that, well, there's these races, there's those races. It's almost like they don't know where to start. It's like, like computer froze up and can't compute. That's the look on their faces. But the point is to not having a judgment, to just keep talking about this and just kind of become that crazy person, because when something happens, they would know, oh, I know someone who I can go talk to, and the best thing we can do is just kind of make our presence known, no matter how difficult, challenging and angry, full of not anger, but frustration it is, to have to deal with all kinds of people. Because I've had people just, I've had this lady once and we were talking, I guess she knew I was into UFOs and she just came straight to me. She's like, well, I don't believe in aliens. And I was like, okay, and I was just kind of looking at her. So it's like, what do you have to say about that? I said, well, what do you believe in then? It just had a normal kind. She thought that I was just going to, off the sudden, be the total opposite and go, well, why not start an argument with her or something? I think that's what she was thinking.
Right.
I said, I'm not here to force you. It's like, what I have to say is what I have to say. You can either relate to it or don't, and that's where I have to leave it. It's like, I can't,
And she's
I mean,
one
look
of
at all the
those.
arguments we've all had about, God, and I don't really want to get into that subject right now, but these are, although very advanced from all the stories told and things witnessed, um, you know, the, uh, there's still all that mystique about it, because
Mhm.
it's almost like this conversation you and I are having. You can have this conversation and you are sure we had it. You remember me asking you questions, hearing me, everything else, and you walk away. And for some weird reason, let's say my account on your Skype is deleted, and any trace of this conversation is just gone. It can drive somebody nuts trying to, you know, convey to somebody, no, I really did have this conversation. I really did sit right here and this is where it happened. But people always said, well, where's the proof? I'm like, I don't have it. I don't know how it disappeared. And that's, I think, how most of us are dealing with it. It's like, we know what
Mhm.
just happened, what we just experienced. And there's certain things that were supposed to be our experience, learn from it, of course, retell the story, but we can't have that proof yet to where we hold that grail, in the hand and say, well, here's your proof, whatever, or picture or video. And even then, people are going to be like, well, this is fake and this is photoshopped. So, unless they have that personal experience, I don't know what else can be really accepted as proof to any of the skeptics or anyone that's curious but doesn't want to, go full-fledged out as a believer.
Mhm. Well, you hit on so many things in that. I wanted to say that what you're talking about is about people wanting to not think they're alone is probably the primary thing with people who come to me with their reports. I remember so distinctly a couple in St. Charles, Missouri, that reported to MUFON, and I got assigned the case, and I contacted them, and they had a sighting of some kind of craft. That's not what bothered them. What bothered them was they got home, turned the TV on, turned the radio on, bought every news source possible throughout the
And
night,
nothing.
and they're like, "Who? We can't be the only people that saw this. Oh my God! How can we? There's nothing on the news. There's nothing. Nobody's reporting this. Ah, are we crazy?" And I said, "No, of course you're not crazy. You were just, any number of speculations. Number one, you happen to be looking in the right place at the right time. That's why you saw this. Number two, if there's more involved to the sighting, were whoever was in charge of this craft, were they tuning in on you? Because there's been a number of reports through the years of people driving down through a crowded city street and all this, and there's this UFO sitting right there above them, through 5 or 6 blocks of heavy traffic. And they're looking around and everybody else is just, driving around, singing in their car or smoking or whatever, blah, 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 drinking their soda. It's like, don't you people see this, what I'm seeing? Not everybody is aware. Not everybody is ready to accept seeing something like that. There's a variety of reasons. If you've had an experience, and I include sightings as an experience, then there's the door. You're going to walk through it, or are you going to close it and pretend it didn't happen? My personality is I cannot pretend it didn't happen. I remember so well, I was working at Edward Jones and Company, financial services company, in the video department. And that year I had enough money to go to a symposium. And I was all excited and telling the office secretary about it. And she was an older lady, probably about my age, older. So I was going on and on about it. And she finally burst out laughing. Her name was Maureen. She looked at me laughing. She goes, "Who cares? Who cares if there's aliens? Who cares if there's UFOs? I make my paycheck. I go home. I have my loving husband. We have our family dinner. I got my grandkids. That doesn't have any bearing on my life. I thought, I have to acknowledge that. Yeah, so in relation to what I said earlier, it may not have had a bearing on her life at that point, but as our consciousness expands, it's going to. You know, it's like when you're a baby, you don't know how to cook your food, but at some point your consciousness takes it in, and you're big enough that you can actually cook your own food and feed yourself. That's kind of what we're talking about. You know, except it's a vast, greater amount of knowledge. And our consciousness has to expand in order to be able to take in that knowledge. I was going to say, when we were talking about sources of information, wouldn't it be fun to know what the Vatican's got in its vaults?
Right.
Regarding UFOs
we
and
know,
aliens. And everything else.
Just a quick side note, something that I had that has been brought up to me by several people. It was regarding the people I've interviewed, and something they said kind of hit home. And they said, "Well, have you mapped out where all their sightings happen?" And I said, "No, it's not something I generally did. I mean, I follow up on questions and things like that." And she said, "I think you'll be interested to see what you find that all the people you've interviewed, and kind of put a little pin on a map, and then next person put a pin on a map where their sighting happened, that something would be there. I guess that some kind of pattern would emerge that would, I guess, that I would find interesting. I have not done that yet, but that was something I was told. And so I have so many things going on right now in my life. And so, you know, I'm sure one of these days I'll do that, you know, because right now the thing is that, especially given where the field of ufology is, and generally what the energy that I feel, you know, with what's happening, it's not that urgent yet, but I feel like within the next 7 years, you know, it would be more urgent, you know, that we're still kind of in this gap of information age regarding this, and that sooner or later, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if even certain parts of government start calling in some of the experiencers and just like, okay, tell us, what do you know? Because now it's getting to a point to where we need to look at this, you know. And this.
Oh, they've been doing that.
Right. I mean, no, I meant
not specifically right. Blatantly calling them.
That's what I meant. I meant blatantly, to where that would be something that they would even go as far as publicly acknowledge it and say, we need more information. We need more looking into it. Now, most of us have been into this. No, they've been into this since, you know, way before the 40s, if not soon, you know, earlier. But, you know, that's something that I feel is a potential, I guess, potential quote unquote official world disclosure. You know, to where, I guess, for some reason, people always hold that government as the barometer of where we're at, where we stand. And it's almost as if the government doesn't acknowledge it, we don't have to acknowledge it. You know, the second that changes, you know, the second government gives you a hint, then everyone else will be, so to say, almost on their toes and say, okay, what's up with this? You know, you mean, you know, movies, there's something to the movies they've been showing us, you know, and things like that.
Well, there's regarding that particular item, there's a hot topic with YouTube talking about the parallels of the Planet Serpo exchange program and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And I'd heard it years ago when Close Encounters of the Third Kind premiered. There was a special showing at the White House, and allegedly Ronald Reagan was supposed to have leaned over to Steven Spielberg, the director, and said, if they only knew how real this is, if they only knew. I personally don't ever see disclosure of that nature happening. Um, Only because once you make the public aware, once you become aware of something, you have the ability to fend it off. It's your choice. It's and as long as they can keep doubts in people's mind, they can make people feel they're afraid, number one, which paralyzes you, or disbelieving, and unable to use their own power, and I'm talking spiritual power, to fend off any aliens.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, Joe. I say just to tie in earlier what you said about consciousness and some of those. I mean, that know I'm very much into understanding this conscious shift of contact and consciousness and government. You know, one thing that I learned was that was conveyed to me is that the government is a creation of us, you know, and I've often said this in one of my other videos, you know, we have fears. So the government said, don't worry, I'll protect you. You know, we perceive ourselves as weak. So the government said, you know, I will build an army and make you strong, you know. And what I mean is that by these collective emotional shortcomings, we've allowed the establishment of such thing as government. So it's there to really keep doing what we say we cannot. So of course, if all of a sudden something happens that's such drastically different, it's only natural for the first thing to happen is the government step in and said, no, don't worry, everything's just fine. Nothing to see here. You know, I will protect you, you know? And,
yes, that's the weather.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, it was just a weather balloon. Don't worry about it.
Right. And so, that's what gets me is that the government, you know, it's almost like we talk about it as if it's this thing on its own, but it's basically a collection of people that then resonate based on our shortcomings. You know, so people, you know, will go and work, be, you know, anywhere from clerk to all the way up to soldier. You know, and presidents and all these people that generally are attracted to be quote unquote public servants are all people that will, you know, always act in such ways to where they would, I guess what you would call it, to try to make us, you know, feel safe, even though they're lies, you know? And so by recognizing that, I have to stop constantly pointing outwards and blaming the government. I just have to say, you know, what it is that I'm not doing to tell the government it's okay for you to tell me the truth. You know, and not just me as an individual, but let's say, for an example, in America, if I have, 350 million people that live here, for everyone to say, you can tell me now. I'm not afraid to know. You know, it's okay for you to tell me, and don't worry, I will not, you know, punish you in return because I understand you did this for my protection, for me feeling safe. You know, and I can't expect people to believe that point of view because it's only happened to me after I've had my own experiences and revelations and things explained to me. You know, only then made that perfect sense to constantly stop making a straw man out of the government and look at government as a collection of all these individuals, you know, and appeal to them. Whatever change we want, to appeal to them as these workers that maintain it, you know, to say, you know, it's okay. It's time for change. Let's change.
Yeah. I remember very distinctly here in Missouri where there was an attempt to force the governor's office to release everything it knew about UFOs. And I remember when it was going on, it was going to be by signature. You have to have X number of signatures to get on a ballot and blah, 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 blah. Long story short, I thought, what makes you think the governor's office has any knowledge whatsoever about this stuff. You have to ask the right person the right question to get the answer you're looking for. And that's true at any level that you want to go to. If I'm doing an interview with an eyewitness and I don't ask the right questions, I'm not going to get all the story. So, boy, you talked about so much in the last 2 minutes that I could just go on for days about. Government.
I'm sorry, I got you riled up.
I worked for the city of St. Charles government for 8 years, and I know just at that level, not even a county level, a city level, all the ins and outs that go on with that stuff. And then you take that up to the White House. Oh, Lord have mercy. That's why I say we are never going to see disclosure like we think we're going to see it, because there's too much at risk. There's way too much at risk. You've got some people out there purporting to be after it. We want disclosure because we know there's technology they have that can help mankind. Really? I think y'all are too full of your ego because you want your name, so-and-so made this breakthrough with the governments and blah, blah, blah. Y'all are in it for the money. Y'all are not in it to help fellow human beings.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I guess it just we've been going on for quite a bit, and I wish I had more time. But I certainly do appreciate you coming on and talking and covering all these different subjects in a detailed way. So I guess in conclusion, if you could please tell us your website, and I'll have the spelling of it and written out in the description below. So just say the website and anything else that you like to get the people's attention on, and then we'll conclude with that.
Okay, my website, www.joseph, that's JOSEPH Palermo, PALERMO.com. And I have 4 channels on that website. The one, if you're interested in the topics we've been talking about, you want to go to either the 21st Century Living graphic, which includes a link to the MUFON meetings that I've got up online, or you may want to go to the paranormal channel. That's where you'll find my documentary on the Chupacabra. Other than that, if you have any questions or comments, send them in to Adnan here.
Or they can contact you directly as well. I'll rather do that, especially when it's referring to you. Do you have a contact on your website? Okay.
Sure, you can email me. There's a contact mechanism, but you can also email me at Joseph Palermo, all small letters and all one word, 2012 at gmail.com.
Okay. Well, Joe, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. We'll talk some more about getting those links from you, and I'll put them in the description. And thanks again for taking the time today, and thanks everyone else for watching. And so we'll stay in touch.
Okay, given the month we're in, happy Valentine's Day, people. Mwah!
All right, take care, Joe. Thank you.
All right, bud. Take care.